In many respects, the story in dairy for 2023, similar to other livestock productions, was really the feed availability and the cost to feed the herd. So that's really impacted the producers' profitability in the dairy sector. So what can we expect moving forward for 2024?
Yeah, no doubt margins were under some pressure last year in the dairy sector. I do think that margins are looking better in 2024. And there's a reason why. I can go back to 23 for a second here. There's a reason why, or a number of reasons why. We had a few challenges on profitability. If you look at interest rates, I mean, a lot of dairy operations had to make investment and had to renew loans at much higher interest rates than maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. And so that created a few challenges. There's been quite a bit of disruption in the dairy sector at the beginning of the pandemic. And then we're just now starting to see the markets kind of just, finding its footing a little bit. So, number of different reasons. Bottom line, there's been some pressures. We think that if you look back at, if you look forward, that is, to 2024, we think that the margins are going to be a little bit better. Now, one of the key drivers of these margins are feed costs. And so you're going to see up on the screen what we call our index of feed costs, and that's basically what it shows is that there's a projected decline in that index, quite significant really, just right now at the beginning of the year. And the forecast is that despite a little bit of an increase sometime in the fall, that this index, or this cost index for dairy producers, is going to remain at a level that could actually mean, given what we know about the milk price, could actually mean that those margins in 24 could look a little bit like they were in 2019. So I think there's a lot of optimism now in this. The bottom line is that if you think of feed in dairy, a plus or minus 10% change in feed costs actually can lead to a plus or minus 40% change in net profitability. Now that's a big driver of profitability. So I think that for me the key message, Darlene, is that any operation that is able to gain a 2-3%, working with suppliers in terms of trying to gain a 2-3% efficiency in their costs, working through rations and so forth, would actually benefit a lot from working in an environment where margins are going to improve, but they're still going to be tight.
Okay, thank you for that. So, good overview of costs. Is there anything else that dairy producers should actually be keeping an eye on moving into 2024?
So there's plenty else, that's for sure, right? So let's talk about the milk price. So we know that effective May 1st, that there is going to be on average a 1.8%, a projected 1.8% increase in the milk price. So I think that's good news. That increase was initially supposed to happen in February, but because of some of the pressures that consumers face, I mean, the decisions was made to delay the increase, which makes good sense. And so now we're going to get a roughly 2% increase in the projected milk price. So I think that's good news as well for margins. Obviously, we have to pay attention to what's going on south of the border. About 12% of the butterfat is priced in function of what the price in the U.S. is. And so what the USDA basically says is that, yes, prices in the U.S. are going to come down from the highs of 2022, but they've been somewhat stable in the last 3-4 months. And if you look at the projection of the USDA, it actually suggests that those prices are going to remain somewhat stable. So again, we're not expecting any downside when it comes to U.S. prices, which should bring a little bit of support to the price paid to Canadian producers. Another factor or driver of profitability would be production, right? So we look at overall market requirements of the last 12 months. The most recent data points to a 3% increase compared to what it was 12 months ago. So demand for dairy products has been resilient. As a result, we know in the western provinces that we've had an announcement of a quota increase, so that's also good news from that standpoint. But if we have market requirements that are 3% higher than what they were 12 months ago, I think that suggests that dairy demand has been quite resilient despite some of the pressures that consumers have faced, right? So we've been talking a lot, going back to the discussion on beef, pork, dairy, of substitution that consumers make when it comes to their food choices. And there's no doubt that doing this, but it seems that to me that this demand has been quite resilient. And let's not forget that population growth in Canada for 2023, we've hit a rate that we've never seen over the last 40 years and more. That has actually been quite a bit provided a bit of support to the dairy sector.
Yeah, good news there.